Don't die. There's been a lot of emphasis and a lot of people out there talking about not dying recently. What if I told you that this mentality, fear, is the path to the dark side? My name is Dr. Scott Scher, and welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about not dying and some of the psychology that I'm seeing a lot in clinical practice regarding this. So let's start here. You're doing the work. You train even when you're tired. You eat clean even when you don't want to think about food. You track your sleep, your HRV, your recovery. Maybe you even say it out loud, or at least feel it on a regular basis. Don't die. It's become a very famous and popular concept now. There's Don't Die Everything with Brian Johnson out there, right? But here's the question most people won't ask. Is fear, or if fear is driving your health, what is it actually building? This is the question. Underneath all of this, it isn't just discipline. It's guilt and fear working together. And I'm seeing this all the time. Guilt if you miss a workout. Guilt if you eat the wrong thing. Guilt if your data isn't where it should be. And beneath that is a quiet fear that if you let up, something will go wrong. You will actually die, right? So the system organizes around prevention. Avoid the mistake, avoid the decline, avoid the outcome. But when your system is organized around avoidance, it doesn't expand. It actually contracts. You become consistent but less flexible, structured but less adaptive, disciplined but more fragile. From the outside, you look optimized. You're trying not to die. But from the inside, you're braced because you're worried about dying, right? And so this isn't about whether don't die is right or wrong. I see what Brian is trying to do here and create a movement about not dying. But what I'm seeing as a ricochet from this is very, very concerning. It's about what it does to your physiology when it becomes the organizing principle of worrying about not dying. Because health isn't built from intensity. It's built from sequence. And the sequence most people are skipping is this: state, then energy, not strategy, hoping for the state. Okay, so let's map this out for all of you. The system follows three non-negotiables: energy before regulation, safety before optimization, signal before structure. When fear leads, fear of death in this case, the sympathetic system stays more active than it needs to be or should be. Vigilance increases, sympathetic nervous system. Behaviors tighten and contraction is much more common. And in some ways, as a lot of people are these, and I talk about this a lot now, this is the sympathetic spiral of doom based on fear-based responses of not dying, right? So you try to control outcomes, you increase structure, you lose flexibility, you feel less safe, you double down, and this loop goes over and over again. So sympathetic activation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and they go over and over again, right? So over time, this doesn't build health. It builds dependence on control, a dependence on fear-based ways of living. And more importantly, it erodes your reserve over time. So what do people do in this case, right? They're fearing death. They don't want to die, right? They track more, they take more supplements, they do more protocols, they try to have more discipline, or even they swing the other way, which I just need to relax. I just need to stop caring so much. But both approaches miss the same thing. They're acting on behavior without shifting the system itself, the foundational state that your system is in. So nothing actually resolves. The guilt stays, the pressure stays, the fragility stays, the fear gets worse over time. So here's the correct sequence. The shift is not motivational, although mindset is a big part of this, right? It's structural aspects of your physiology that are so important here. So we move from avoiding death to increasing capacity, not only from a physiologic, mitochondrial, cellular perspective, but also from a mental capacity too. Because if you're just doing these things to avoid dying, that is fear-based response, and that is something that we call negative attachment. You're negatively attached to an outcome, which is almost stronger than a positively attached outcome. Wow, I really want something for Christmas. Wow, I really don't want something for Christmas. Which one is stronger, right? So what is the sequence here that we need to do to? First is we need to interrupt this loop of constant correction. And then we have to access what is called the parasympathetic state. I call it the parasympathetic edge, which is to down-regulate your nervous system, to calm things down. It's not collapse. It's not a full shutdown. But the edge is where the system starts to feel like you can handle this. If you talk to anybody at the highest level of their game, They're not in sympathetic all the time. They've dropped down just a little bit into that parasympathetic edge, and that's where they perform best. And that's where you're going to perform the best. If everything's all about fear all the time, you're not going to feel good, even if you're doing all the right things. You need to build reserve as well. And the reserve piece is the capacity piece, okay? The reserve and capacity go together. You want the capacity to put on your nervous system when you need to, but then shut it off and maintain that parasympathetic edge most of the time. And so you can do this by understanding physiologically cellular function for sure. That's a huge part of this with what I do in clinical practice. But the mindset aspect of this is absolutely essential. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so how do you build reserve? If you build reserve, let's talk about that. You training stress, dietary variability, life unpredictability without losing stability. That is a life that you want to live, right? And so the way I think about this is looking at optimizing that foundation. The foundation that I use in clinical practice is something called health optimization medicine. This is optimizing vitamins, minerals, nutrients, cofactors, right? Getting your cells the capacity to be resilient, to be stressed, and then to come down. Most people you're using a lot of the right tools already, right? And I have a lot of these in my clinical practice. They could be using a Whoop, they can be using Aura, they can be doing a lot of different kinds of other tracking devices as well to help them understand their stress levels, their HRV, and everything. This is all very, very important. The key here is going from fear-based not dying to capacity-based flexibility, resilience, and health span, living every day as healthy as possible. Because when you do that, you will extend your lifespan as well, for sure. And you will not die as often, except there's something random that happens to you, right? So moving from fear to capacity. And that's what I talk about all the time with my patients. You can look at every supplement, you can look at every tool and technology, and I use a lot of these in practice, but if it's coming from a fear-based place, you're not going to see the benefit that you think that you might. And so it's so important when you're talking about nutrition, you're talking about cold exposure, you're talking about sauna. You see Brian taking 1,000 supplements a day. Like, is he coming from a place where he's fearing death, or is he coming from a place where he's increasing his capacity? Brian's interesting because he definitely has some neurologic atypical stuff, right? And so I don't think he has the same or the average way of looking at this. When we talk about don't die, he's saying, I just don't want to die and I want to live my best life. But a lot of people don't actually equate that same thing. And they come into this fear-based place, and it's very difficult to have an optimized life and optimized health if that's the case. And so we have to really go back to this map, right? Which is, let's go back to don't die. It's if the phrase creates pressure, urgency, tightness, contraction, it's organizing your system under fear, around fear. Now, if you shift the sequence and your capacity goes up, well, that same drive of fear is going to build your reserve. It's going to allow you to operate from your parasympathetic edge. It's going to allow you to enjoy the things that you're doing on a regular basis to optimize your health rather than not die, right? And so now you're protecting life. You're actually able to live it. So should you care about living a long time? Well, hopefully you can live a long time as healthy as possible, right? But is your system organized around fear or capacity, fear or health optimization, really, right? If it's based around fear, it's not going to work over the long term. And I see this. I was just speaking to a colleague, a patient actually a couple of days ago, who really wants to feel better. He's really worried about dying, taking all the medicines that he needs to, all the supplements, doing all the tools and technologies, but he's coming from a fear-based place. So nothing is changing, okay? So you want adaptability, you want resilience, you want health span, you want day-to-day health optimization. So this is what I do in my clinical practice. I work with people on optimizing their health. I break this sympathetic loop that I'm seeing from people that just don't want to die, interestingly enough, right? So I appreciate Brian's work in some capacity, but if you're taking that and saying, well, I don't want to die, so I'm doing things every day from a fear-based place, fear is going to drive you into the ground over time. Humans are very good with fear because this is one of those things that's very tied to our survival. And obviously, not dying and survival are kind of connected, right? And so don't lead yourself down the dark side, the path. right? There is another way here, which is to look at your health as an optimization path, one that you're working on every single day. Sure, you're going to have good days, you're going to have not so good days, you're going to have optimized feeling days and not optimized feeling days, but it's not coming from a place of fear. If you can do this, you will change your life right now. And I've seen this many, many times in clinical practice. Supporting your cellular system at the same time as that mindset shift is happening is absolutely clutch. And I wish you all a great day thinking about this and breaking the sympathetic spiral of doom related to your fear of not dying. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.